Hello, welcome to Strictly Money at the News Forum, where all voices matter. I'm Saijal Patel. For the month of March, we're running a special Women and Wealth series, and today we discuss financial planning and investing through the lens of women. That's because women need to plan for their financial future differently than men. They typically make less, so save less. And because women on average live 5 years longer than men, they have to stretch those fewer dollars out in retirement. To discuss what women need to think about when managing their wealth is Carla Norris. She's a senior financial planner with National Bank Financial, and she joins me now. Hi, Carla. It's great to have you on.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So in your experience, as you work with many clients on all aspects of their financial plan, how do women compare to men when it comes to financial planning? Do you see a big difference?
As a general rule, I find that women are less focused on the day-to-day market fluctuations. They're not typically the ones at the water cooler bragging that they bought Apple at $1.49.
Yeah.
It's more that they're looking at it from a more holistic point of view. They're more worried that, or more concerned that the market fluctuations, how they affect their goals, their dreams, their aspirations. So they're looking more big picture.
Okay. I spoke about the challenges, right? Like the wage gap and the longer lifespan. In your view, Carla, do you think women recognize that those are challenges? And if they do, what are the specific concerns that they do have?
I think single women are very aware of
Yeah.
these challenges. They're living them on a day-to-day basis. I think the women that are possibly more blindsided by them are women who go through a relationship uh, uh, wind up later in life,
Mm-hmm.
or they're perhaps widowed later in life, and they're a little bit more shocked. The assets that they and their partner built up over their lifetime is now cut in half, and they don't have necessarily the income to make up that ground.
Yeah. Is it retirement that they're mostly worried about? I mean, I certainly hear that a lot. Like, I don't know if I have enough. I don't know what is enough. Concerns that they might be outliving their savings in retirement.
Absolutely. I find that the women who come to me that are talking about retirement are concerned that they can even consider retiring, and how it's going to impact them. Often they're a little more pessimistic, I think, than the men who come in.
Yeah. Carla, women often prioritize their family. And I've seen they often put their own financial security sometimes on the back burner. Do you think that we need to start, as women, we need to start shifting that mindset? Like, what's the cost?
Absolutely. I mean, there's the societal pressures that we have. There our own guilt that we deal with. I mean, the statistics show we're still doing the majority of the housework, the majority of the cooking, the majority of the shopping, and that really affects our ability to earn. And so I think really we have to start asking for help, asking, for a more equal playing field, I guess.
Yeah. We have a minute and a half left to commercial break, but for those women who do face a larger wealth gap compared to men, what advice do you have for them? How do they catch up?
Sadly, it's not very exciting. Really, it's to save early and to save regularly, and really look for the low hanging fruit, I
Mm.
guess, is my message. There are a lot of employers who offer pension plans, group RSPs, employee share purchase plans, and quite often they will match your contributions to some extent. And so that is, it can be 100% return on your investment immediately. And so look for those opportunities. The other benefit to those plans are that they will take the money straight off your paycheck, so you never see it. And what you don't see, you don't miss. And so that's a great way to accelerate your savings and make it as painless as possible.
Yeah, and investing that money is really important, right? Because you're taking advantage of the power of compounding. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Carla, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about generational differences that you're seeing and how women in different life stages need to approach planning. One of the things that I do hear is, especially women in their early 30s, they don't believe that they will have the quality of life that their parents have. So how can they plan to improve?
Yeah, I guess the concern I have, or the trend I'm seeing, is that a lot of women in their 30s are seeing their parents now inherit from their parents, which would be the Depression era children, and so that generation tended to keep their money close to their chest because they were always worried about the next crisis. But it was very important for them to pass their legacy on to the next generation. And that's what they're seeing their parents receive right now, which I'm finding that the baby boomers who are inheriting, they're very grateful for the windfall. They appreciate it, but they realize that they would have really appreciated that money more before, when they were struggling, when they were first starting out. So I find the baby boomers today are helping out their children, as a client once said, with a warm hand versus a cold hand. And they are seeing that they get through university debt free. They're helping them buy their first home. And so they're giving their children a leg up early on.
Yeah.
Where my concern, I guess, is that now the baby boomers have helped their children. They don't necessarily see the need to leave a large inheritance at the end of the day. And so they see this time as their time. They've helped their children. And so they're going to live the lifestyle that they would like. They're not going to curtail that just to ensure that there's something left at the end of the day for the kids.
Right.
And so what the children may not realize that they're getting the windfall now instead of down the road.
Okay.
And so I think it's really important to take that opportunity if your student loans have been exhausted by your parent, they've been paid off, then if you were putting that money towards your debt, now start directing it to your savings.
Okay. What about women in retirement? Because there is a very good chance that they will outlive their partner if they have one. Healthcare typically declines around 75, so they have to think about healthcare costs, home care. What are some of the things that they need to consider to make sure they're okay?
Yeah, keep in mind that your spending goes in a U shape in retirement typically. So in the early stages of retirement, you're doing all those things you didn't have time to do when you were working. So you're golfing, you're traveling, all those things that are in the mutual fund commercials. And then we find that, to your point, around 75, often you slow up a bit and you can't play golf 5 days a week because you've got bursitis now, or you don't want to travel long distances. And so your spending goes down. And then, of course, in later retirement, it might go up again just because you need more help around the house, or you've got medical expenses that are starting to creep up. So keep in mind that spending does go in a U shape. I find, again, women tend to be very generous. They're very concerned about their children, their grandchildren. And so, again, keeping in mind that those expenses may ramp up again, don't give away too much. They tend to be focused on, preserving the estate, minimizing probate, minimizing taxes. And really, in the end, I always say to clients, I'm sure your children are lovely, but you're my client. I want to make sure you're going to be okay.
Yeah, very, very important. We have about a minute and a half left. You touched on it a little bit, sort of that estate planning piece. And one part of that estate planning can be insurance, right? What role does insurance play to make sure women are okay?
Like, insurance is a huge factor, especially the younger you are. You're almost guaranteed. You're almost insuring your future earnings, your partner's future earnings, and what that earning due to your savings plan, your retirement plan, your day-to-day spending. A lot of Canadians they're insured, but they only have their group coverage through work, and that's often capped at 1 time salary or 2 times salary, and you can do the math. That doesn't necessarily stretch that far.
No.
And so really looking at your cash flow, where things are going currently, and what realistically would change if your partner or you were to pass away, and then also what goals you have for, do you want your children to go to public school or private school? Do you want to pay for their university or post-secondary education, things like that? So
Okay.
really having your insurance looked at is
All right.
important.
Carla, it was great to have you on today. Thanks a lot. Welcome back to Strictly Money. When it comes to investing, research shows there are still some stark differences between men and women. For example, less women invest compared to men, and when they do, they tend to invest more conservatively. Many women don't feel confident investing and, in fact, think men are better at it, but they're wrong. There's overwhelming evidence that women outperform men consistently. Diana Avigdor is a portfolio manager and head of trading at Barometer Capital Management, and she's here to share her investing experience and advice. Diana, it's great to have you on.
Hi, Saijal. Thank you very much for having me.
So I've been teaching women how to invest for about 4 years now, and my message to them is, one, because of the wage gap and wealth gap women face, investing is a really important piece because it can actually help close that gap. We talk about the power of compounding. The second message is you don't need a PhD to do this. It's not that complicated. Do you agree? I mean, what are your thoughts?
So I think that one of the main differences between women and men is their risk tolerance, and what they think that they know. A lot of women feel they don't know enough, and so their risk tolerance is actually lower. But studies have shown that women are actually very good investors, and that's probably because they're more afraid of risk, and so they're a lot more conservative, and they're a lot more. They study things more before they make decisions, and they do things. So it's kind of a two-way thing. One is they don't invest because they're afraid of risk, but once they embrace it, they're better investors because they're more mindful of the risk. So investing is really important. It's your savings. It's not to be ignored. And if you feel you can't do it yourself, then certainly connect with somebody that can advise you and help you in that path.
Yeah. The risk thing is an interesting one, right? It's because I always say, there are rules around investing. If you diversify, it's really about managing risk.
That's correct. That's exactly right. And there is different buckets of risk. So depending on the size of your portfolio, if you have if you've saved for a while now, which you should have, and have a little nest egg, and are able to now split up your portfolio, you can have separate risk buckets. So you can tell yourself, not 100% of my portfolio lives in the same risk bucket. I could have a 20% weight of my portfolio that is slightly higher risk than another 20%. Say you can have a half of your portfolio in some kind of low risk anchor portfolio. Anchor risk, low risk, makes you feel comfortable, confident, and then the rest of the diversification has different risk buckets. Certainly, again, this is something to think about. And if you need help with something like this, if you don't want to do it yourself, you should certainly seek out advice, that's for sure. Because these are things that you do daily, all the time, all day long. And so to us, portfolio managers, it's a natural, it's a second nature.
Yeah. And Diana, one of the things I also hear is that, cash is much safer, and in fact, women keep around 70% of their portfolio in cash and think that that's not risky.
Okay, cash is perceived as safer because it sits there and the number is exactly the same every day, all day long. But you're risking the power of your money declines as inflation increases in the economy. So inflation is something that maybe foreign, or you don't feel it, you can't calculate it, but your money loses value by the amount of the inflation in the economy. And that is your cash losing value. Every time inflation goes up 1%, your cash loses 1%.
Exactly, and we're certainly feeling the effects of inflation right now. Diana, we only have about 45 seconds to commercial break. The other pushback, I guess, or excuse I hear is I don't have a lot of time to invest.
Okay, so you don't have a lot of time. You have to put it on an autopilot or get help, but put it on an autopilot so that you can save monthly, put it somewhere. There's so many different ways that you can do this.
Right, because you can use, say, mutual funds or ETFs, and you can dollar cost average, right? I know we used to call it
Yeah.
a PAC plan. I don't know what it's called now, but these monthly contributions.
We say you have to pay yourself as well. You pay your bills, you pay your gas, you pay your mortgage, and you have to pay yourself too. So you have to put some amount aside for yourself on a monthly basis.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I want to get your thoughts on your experience and what women come to you for advice for. We'll be right back. Diana, as a professional female investor, and especially in a male-dominated industry, I have to think that you get a lot of questions from women who probably can't relate to your world but feel safe asking you for advice. Can you share with us some of the questions that you get?
Yeah, sure. One of the main things I see from women investors is um, the fear when something like what's been happening in the market in the last month with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the markets do sell off and the volatility ensues, and they start seeing their portfolios losing dollars, and they don't calculate it in percentages. There are two things to do. Um, if you're going to do it yourself, you have to set it and leave it a little bit, especially if you feel you don't understand as much. If you want something more active, we, for example, are a fairly active manager, where you give it to a portfolio manager to manage the exposures for you. But so one of the things that I like to go through, and I had an investor that I went through, did this a couple of weeks ago, is look at the portfolio and look at each bucket of investment and regurgitate why you invested in that to begin with. So we went through the X percentage of cash in the portfolio. Is that still okay? Good. The stocks, these are paying you dividends. This is what happens. This is how much you get out of the dividend. So we went through each bucket of investment. And when we were done with going through the fixed income, the equity, the dividend payers, the GICs, or whatever they had in there all together, the client felt a lot more comfortable, so that this was a portfolio of all weathers. Now, when an active manager manages this, they might shift a little bit of cash, buy low, sell high, that sort of thing. So if you want that kind of more active investor, you need to get somebody to look at it for you. But if you're going to do it yourself, and you want to be less turnover, one of the ways is to go through the reasoning why you had an all-weather portfolio. I'd like to say one thing. One of the largest sell-offs in recent memory, due to a geopolitical event, was 9/11, and that sell-off was 11.6%. That sell-off took 6 days to happen and 15 days to recover. So that's not a year or two or five. You need to be able to be comfortable with your portfolio. And sometimes we need to regurgitate and reiterate and relearn the reasons why things are the way they are in your portfolio.
Yeah, I think it's such an important point, because I know when we talk about risk tolerance, that there's a lot of people who think they have a high risk tolerance, and then something, we get a sell off, and then like, and it's like, remember why you set it up the way you set it up. Diana, there is a lot of uncertainty right now, right? And it is making a lot of people nervous. How are you reading the markets right now?
So there's 1,000 different ways to do things. You can be there's different risk parameters. From a conservative perspective, um, these things like I just gave you the example of 9/11. 9/11, 6 days to reach bottom, 15 to come back to flat, and within 6 months the market was up 18%. So it gave you back the 11.6 plus another 6.5%. You have to stay the course. An active manager like ourselves, for example, we have been legging out of technology and into some more reflationary assets over the last 6 months
Okay.
because we look at the market and we look at what works from a relative strength perspective. And that's the advantage you get if you work with someone that does this 24/7. But if you are just in the beginning of your saving cycle, you are on that monthly um, mutual fund, $100 in the beginning of your savings path. You want that portfolio that you feel comfortable. And if you need to go back and look at why you're where you are and think in percentages, not in dollars.
Yeah.
You may have X dollars, but it's only 2%. That'll make you feel better. And also,
Yeah.
do not forget the gains that you have made until now.
Okay.
What you have lost is from gains.
All right. Diana, appreciate you coming on today and sharing your
Thanks, Saijal.
insights. Diana Avigdor of Barometer Capital Management. Well, that wraps up this edition of Strictly Money. Catch our special Women in Wealth series every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. for the month of March, or head to thenewsforum.ca. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.